But we got pulled over in that van, and we had this body part.
It's as if you think you've murdered somebody.
I know. Is the first thing you say, officer, just so you know, there's a fake dead body and a fake gun in the trunk.
Yes, that's what you say. That's what you should have said.
This is the
Independent
Filmmaker's Guide
from Framework Productions.
Framework
Productions.
On IFG, we talk about independent film from development through delivery. By featuring discussions with creators and collaborators about their experiences, we form a roadmap to help you have the most success with your projects. Genre films are a great way to build a fan base and a community. Horror, in particular, is one of the most successful and loved genres that, much like its villains, never seems to die. It's also where many indie features can thrive and reach an audience without a major studio attached. Today we have the team behind the punk slasher film The Ranger, who have done just that.
Again, going back to the eye gets bored looking at the same kinds of trees. And in The Ranger, pretty actively, I tried to choose areas with different kinds of landscapes. So you really felt like you were moving up a mountain and encountering the different woods.
That's Jen Wexler, co-writer and director.
It's my favorite thing that I've ever done. I hope to play him again.
And that's Jeremy Holm, who plays the title role in the film The Ranger.
The more I thought about it, the more it was just like, this can only be Jeremy. From presence to talent to look, it just felt right.
And that's Jaco Farino, creator and co-writer.
The senior thesis for this program is a feature-length script.
I'm your host, Stephen Pierce.
And that was The Ranger for me. The Ranger, in a very ancient form, was my senior thesis. A lot of the core components were there, but the heart wasn't there. But coming up with that idea, to speak a little bit for a moment just about sort of the initial conception, right, of punks versus a park ranger. I was at the time, of course, super into punk, listening to punk all the time, really getting into everything.
I was really hoping you were going to say national parks.
Yeah, really into national parks, exactly. I was really nerding out about national parks. But I was also watching films that, of course, I love and that are sort of like seminal punk movies, Return of the Living Dead specifically. And so I wanted to write a punk movie. And at the time, the idea of sort of like punks versus an authority figure was sort of where this was going to go. And I knew I wanted it to be a slasher. But something about like punks versus cops at the time didn't feel interesting enough or strange enough. And I thought about, well, what else is an authority figure that's a little bit off-center? And the idea of this like Ranger Rick style park ranger, this man who or woman, but in this case, a man who follows rules, who protects the parks. I thought that would be a really fun juxtaposition against these punks that sort of represent, in my mind, like the city, the asphalt, the loud music, unnatural things, versus this sort of warden of the natural world.
Yeah, and I don't think the park ranger I don't think the ranger in your story necessarily is like a real stickler for the rules in a normal way. He's kind of like a more stick you for the rules kind of guy.
Yes.
Hey-oh.
There we go. Hey, there we go.
Got it.
We can edit that out, right?
Yeah, we can. Jen, how did you get involved? Because you're like, you've had a background in horror as a producer, right?
So, I was Jaco's classmate. And I read the script, we had to do little workshops, and I read the script when we were in school, and I was like, oh my God, dude, this is awesome. I hope you get an A on this project. And I just love the idea of like punks versus park ranger, because it felt so 80s and it felt like a movie I should have already seen. But when we graduated, we like didn't really know what to do. We had to go like get jobs and find ways to pay our rent and stuff. So it took a couple years. Eventually, I started working for a production company, and I started producing movies, and I really learned how to make movies. And then my dream has always been to direct. So when the time came, finally, I was like, I called Jaco. I was like, I want to direct a feature, and I want it to be The Ranger. And Jocko was like down. I was like, yo, can you find that script that you wrote years ago and can we work on it together?
To say I was down, of course, right? Like that's a call that doesn't happen, right? Like even among friends in the industry, that's a call that doesn't happen. Like, remember that thing you did a long time ago? Let's make it, right? Like, so that day I was, of course, super excited. And then the terror set in because I would say that this was maybe, 7 years after or something like that, a fair amount of time. And I thought, where is this script? Like, what old busted up laptop is this script set? Like, I hate to admit it, but this was before the cloud, right? Like, this was before like Google Docs. And so it was a frantic, like digging through hacking old email addresses to pull pieces. I had to Frankenstein it together from various drafts.
Let's say in the end, you only have one PDF and you're like, well, I'm going to get to retype all of this.
Yeah, exactly. But, I think that was actually maybe a really healthy way for it to go because all that was left were bits and pieces and the most important moments that I remember. And then from there, Jen and I were able to completely, I would say almost a page one rewrite of that original concept into a new script together. And it like totally folded in everything I love, everything Jen loves. And it became, we weren't just dusting off, an 21-year-old script. We were writing a real movie that the concept was old, but felt very fresh in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you guys are teamed up. You know the script you're going to make from film school. You've rewritten it. How did you go about getting it started? So how did you go about getting the wheels turning, the financing going, and getting the film actually turning in from an idea to a thing?
We started putting together all of our materials. Like I put together a lookbook and we made a teaser. And we submitted the project to this program called the Frontiers Co-Production Market it's part of the Fantasia Film Festival in Montreal. And we got into it. They choose like 20 projects every year. And when you get into it, you go to the festival and you do your pitch in front of a room full of finance people and industry people. So we did that. And it was a really great event for us because out of that, we found a producer that we were going to team up with, and we got our financing out of it.
Oh, wow. So you were able to find it basically in one fell swoop. Like you had...
In hindsight, it feels lovely that, in the moment we didn't know it was one fell swoop, but it still took months. I mean, that was in the summer of 2016. It was July 2016 that we did that pitch. And then we were still like talking to the producer and it was still like a process. And then we ended up shooting the following spring. So in the moment, I didn't realize how quickly it was moving. In hindsight, I was like, oh, that actually was pretty lovely. And that ran really smoothly.
So how did you approach your initial like production budgeting? How much were you allocating to locations? How much were you like, oh, we can shoot this in a single location, more or less, like in the woods? Like, how did that all break out for you guys?
So for my time producing, I started learning this process really well and learning how to do it on a small budget. So actually part of what was appealing about the Ranger and part of why I thought of it and thought to go to Jocko was because, it's location, right? Most of it's in the woods. You have a little bit in a punk bar in the beginning, and then most of it's in the woods. Most of it's in these cabins. And we shot in an area that I was familiar with, which was Woodstock, New York, where I had shot some other films. I liked that it went from this like colorful kind of environment into this more like wooded environment. And all of that you can do in a low budget way, again, keeping it really interesting to the eye. So we started putting all this together, like while we were writing it, we were putting that together and creating a production plan. And we started moving forward and we started chatting with Jeremy.
Yeah. So how did you get your cast together? What pieces fell in when?
Jeremy was the first cast. Jocko and I were writing it with Jeremy in mind. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about your background together?
Listen, I'll tell you this. If you don't fucking clean the espresso machine, at Del Frisco Steakhouse in New York City, the way it's supposed to be cleaned, you're going to hear from me. Okay.
Make it nice or make it twice.
That's right. Make it nice. Make it nice.
So you guys knew each other from work.
Yeah. So that what Jeremy's alluding to there is that he and I were fellow waiters at this very sort of high-end steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan. And from the moment I met him, we hit it off, of course. He's a fantastic, completely magnetic guy. But I just knew as we're rewriting and he'd done plenty of amazing acting before this, of course, which I'd seen some of. And as I'm writing this, I'm just thinking, Jeremy, like he just kept coming into the character. And the more I thought about it, the more it was just like, this can only be Jeremy from presence to talent to look. It just felt right.
Usually when you read a script, you're like, that scene, there's too much. There's not enough. I don't understand it. This script was tight, very tight from beginning to end. And I understood it. And I was like, I'm in. And I knew that my team would like give me trouble about it being, a low budget film. But I just said, no, we're doing it. Make it happen. Figure it out. We're doing it. And we did it. And to this day, it's my favorite thing that I've ever done. I hope to play him again. I love the character. I love the genre. I love the humor. I love how spooky it is. I love everything about it. And the thing I love the most is the team we had, together to do it.
Let's talk about the team you got together. So how much other cast did you have and how did you acquire them? Specifically, I think Chloe, how did you get her involved?
I met her at South by Southwest. So in 2017, I was there with a couple movies that I had produced and we were casting for The Ranger. And my casting director said, hey, check out Chloe Levine. She's in this movie, The Transfiguration, which is playing at South by. So I saw it. And meanwhile, they sent her the script and she read it. So we ended up meeting at South by and just totally clicking and bonding over the script. And so South by was in March of that year and we were shooting in April. So it was very quick. And it was a pretty quick turnaround between meeting her and casting her. And then over those next few weeks, I met the rest of the cast as well through auditions and meetings and stuff.
How did you find your casting director?
Lois Stratkin. She's amazing. She's a New York-based casting director. And our company, Gloss Pix, has worked with her on a bunch of films. So there was already that relationship.
Gotcha. So now let's talk about getting into production itself. Did you have rehearsals, much rehearsals? What was your shooting schedule like?
Our shooting schedule was about 18 days. And in terms of rehearsal, I did a read through with all the punks. And then I did a read through of the scenes that Chelsea and the Ranger are in with Chloe and Jeremy. And Jeremy was pretty much kept separate from the punks until he arrived to set. And we tried to shoot everything without Jeremy first so that we could really create this like bonding experience between the punks. And then there would be this like new force that showed up. But because Chloe and Jeremy had a read through earlier on, they had a little bit of a bond. So Jeremy was a new force to everybody except for Chloe.
And that seems like that mirrors the plot of the film pretty well, where there's a connection between these two other characters that no one else is in on.
Yep, exactly.
So the location, you said you were familiar with it, but is that like you were able to kind of, I assume, secure some kind of location that allowed you to basically load in once and be very agile and move around, be very loose, right?
Not quite. It's really nice when you can do that, but we kind of shot all over the Hudson Valley area. So we stayed at the same hotel and every day we would kind of drive out to a different area. But I've seen some woods movies where, again, going back to the eye gets bored looking at the same kinds of trees. And in The Ranger, pretty actively, I tried to choose areas with different kinds of landscapes. So you really felt like you were moving up a mountain and encountering the different woods, the different kinds of trees and stuff you find when you're actually climbing a mountain. And then for the climax of the movie, so the climax takes place at a fire tower, and I I went to, there's all these different fire towers in the Hudson Valley, and I started visiting a bunch of them. You could even do like a challenge, like the fire tower challenge, where you hike up to all the different fire towers. So this one I fell in love with on one of the hikes, and it's on Hunter Mountain. I was just like, oh my God, we have to shoot at this fire tower. It's perfect. It's a dream. And we shot the teaser at that fire tower. The thing about the fire tower is that like roads don't go there. You have to climb. So we shot this at the end of the shoot. And the big thing that like we were all kind of dreading, because we had done it when we did the teaser, was going back up this mountain where it's like a hike, like 2-hour hike, and it's pretty vertical. And I had to have my SAG actors climb up it, but they were so cool. Jeremy like ran up it ahead of everybody else.
It was fun, man. It was fantastic. And Jen left out that it's the tallest fire tower in the state of New York. So not only was it our last shot, but it's the tallest, it's the most epic, it has the best view. It was fantastic.
The Rangers cabin that we ended up using though was like that was a total dream. Like that was just me talking to the film office, my producers and I chatting with the film office and getting different references. And then like we found this one that really was like out of my brain. It was like, this is exactly what I've always dreamed of when I think of the Rangers cabin.
That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about your special effects and your visual effects. Most of it seemed like it was practical special effects on site. So is that where you kind of you went specifically into making sure that you could spend your money in that area and have the props you want to really be the gruesome kind of foot coming off the trap and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, for sure. So we worked with Brian Spears and Pete Gerner and Ashley Thomas, who are amazing special effects people, and they do stuff for Marvel TV shows, and they roll up in their van full of body parts and everyone gets so excited. And
tell them about driving that van full of body parts and getting pulled over.
It was after we filmed the young Chelsea, who looks over the side of the cliff and sees the dead body on the cliff. So it was that night, and we were riding in the punk van that has all the graffiti on it. And meanwhile, it like had broken tail lights and stuff. It's like, and it doesn't even work anymore. I think we got rid of it. But we got pulled over in that van, and we had this body part. This dead Larry body in the back of the van, and like, I remember sitting there being like, don't look in the trunk. Don't look in the trunk.
It's as if you think you've murdered somebody. You're trying.
I know. I didn't it's just so weird. Like, is the first thing you say to an officer, like, officer, just so you know, there's a fake dead body and a fake gun in the trunk. Like, that's crazy.
Yes, that's what you say. That's what you should have said.
Yeah. Especially with all the crazy shit going on right now, like I'm like rethinking my own experience with cops, as everybody is. And I'm just like, wow, that was like a insane moment and a really fucked up thing. But anyway, she left us with a warning to like get our car fixed, and that was it.
So what was your safety like on set? Because you have SAG actors, there's lots of little fights and push and pulls, there's guns. What was the safety like?
So we had a stunt coordinator to work with us and approach all of those different fights and things in a safe way. We didn't have, all the guns were totally fake, and we added some flashes in post. What else? What other craziness did we do?
I think those are mostly the ones. I just wanted to know, is that, how did you schedule that? Like, how much time did you leave? Because obviously you don't have 18 days. It's super fast. That's super hard to pull off. So how are you approaching like a fight sequence?
She approaches it by shooting it right at the end of an afternoon when the sun's going down. So you only get one take. That's how she approached it. I'm kidding. It's not that bad. It's almost that bad.
Jeremy loves it.
I did love it, but I was like, okay, the sun, we've got 5 minutes.
But you know what else? The sun did go down, and we have an awesome G&E team of a 1-in-1, 2 people, one grip, one gaffer, who made the room into the late afternoon sun so we could keep on going. So it was all good. In terms
it was miraculous, I thought. Miraculous.
But also the most important thing is you have actors who are down and having fun, and everybody has a great attitude, and Jeremy and Chloe were like all in it. They were
That was a blast. That's the most fun I've ever had on set. That the final scene, the binocular smashing scene, is the most fun I've ever had on set. It was so fun.
Jeremy was like covered in blood.
Yeah, it felt like, and it's a good sequence that keeps building from the same angle. So, I mean, did you just shoot it sequentially so you could just keep adding more blood and keep adding more blood and keep adding more blood? Or what was your approach to the continuity?
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly what we did. It's pretty much just two angles. It's a low angle and a high angle on each of them. What was that like for you? Talk more about it, Jeremy, that fight scene.
I didn't know how we were going to do it. And because it's described as this epic battle, and I just followed your lead, and it was the only scene in the whole movie I had any trepidation about, because if it's not good, it ruins the movie. But once we started, I was like, okay, Jen has got this under control. And then, we do a few takes, and then we go back, and Brian Spears right there, like 5 feet from the fire tower, which was an other fire tower that we did the stunt scene in, and the real fire tower, which looked exactly the same when you're watching the movie. And he'd add a little more blood, and we'd go back, and Jen would say a little more, a little more, a little more, and then we'd go back and put more blood on. And she pushed Chloe so hard. She just kept saying, no, more, deeper, more, deeper. And Chloe and I were like trusting each other big time. And it was exhilarating. It was so fun.
Yeah.
I want to die again.
I wanted Chloe to get to this really primal place, which she totally got to. But it's a part of the process of getting exhausted. You really
physiological.
Yeah. You really feel she's exhausted, and it's primal and everything, because was totally exhausted. We did that so many times, especially her punching you.
Do you know what I remember about that scene? We shot that scene, and I don't know, it took probably 2 hours, maybe 3 to shoot that scene. We did it really fast, and it was work. We kept working. Then I remember Jen was like, your shower is ready. And she had the shower inside the house where we were shooting was all ready. There's a nice hot towel. There was a robe. And she even had a beer waiting for me after the shower, which is my favorite thing at the end of a long shoot day. And she just had it all. She thought ahead, and it was all arranged. I was like, I want to work with this woman every day.
First of all, thank you. And I love that you're giving me the credit for that, when that was definitely the producers.
Well, whoever did that, it was awesome. Ashley, was it Ashley that did that?
It was one of them. I was way too focused on Chloe's primal scream, but I'm happy to take the credit for it. Another important thing that Jeremy mentioned early on in terms of stunts and all this stuff is that the fire tower where this fight happens, we built that separately. So none of that actually took place on the real fire tower. The real fire tower, we did shoot the exteriors on, but that would have been impossible to actually shoot any kind of fight scene or anything in.
Definitely an old functional fire tower.
Yeah. We had this killer art team that built this thing, and it really.
So what was your post-production timeline? What was it like? Did you edit it, I believe, right, Jen? You and someone else?
No, I did a cut of it, and then I brought on a co-editor who's also our key grip. She does everything, as it turns out, Abby, and she came in and kind of killed some of my darlings, and she did the montages and made some things feel razor quick and cool. And but that whole process, we wrapped in May, and we had our movie finished in January. So I had time. I mean, I was just sitting with my movie. I was one with my movie and really feeling it and putting it together. And it was the first feature that I ever edited. I had cut short stuff, but it was my first feature. It was a really transformative experience. You're sitting there with all your footage from your first feature and you're cutting your first feature. It really I don't know.
And Jaco, were you involved in the production process and post?
No, not at all. It was great.
So you just handed the script and said, "Go, bring me back something."
Yeah, as the co-writer of a script, there's like not a ton to do. I couldn't be very helpful. I came for a few days on set. I believe they were the first days that Jeremy was shooting, just to sort of hang out and see the production a little bit and sort of talk to the actors and answer any questions they had and just sort of like hang around. But at that point, by the time I got there, everyone knew what they were doing and didn't need me. So I got to just sort of hang out and watch a movie get made. It was great.
So in the edit, once you finished the edit, did you have it externally mixed and color corrected? And if so, by whom?
I work with a sound designer and mixer whose name is Sean Duffy, and he's amazing. He has done the sound for a bunch of my movies, including Darling and Like Me, and Psychopaths. And he's kind of a one-man band, and he's great. So I did temp sound design, and then he came from LA to New York to the Glass Eye office, and we kind of did a version of the mix there. And then at the end, I went to LA and we finessed it. And then in terms of color, I went to Dallas because our producer is tight with the colorist in Dallas, and that was cool. I'd never been to Dallas, and I got to work with this color team that usually does commercials. They don't do that many features, so it was fun and special.
So one of the things that I think is most notable, and it's definitely like, I believe your soundtrack won for like best original soundtrack at one of the festivals I saw. So how did you work out and how did you get your soundtrack on an indie budget?
Well, we have amazing producers. Our producers, Heather Buckley, Andrew Vandenhouten, Ashley Sneed, and Larry Fessenden, are just the best producers in the world. So Heather Buckley is super connected, first of all, to the punk scene. And second of all, she's friends with this music promoter whose name is Mitta Goodwin. And he used to be a band promoter in the 80s and was tight with all these different bands. So he came on as our music supervisor, and he asked a bunch of bands he was friends with if they wanted to be involved. Then they came to me with a list, like, here's all the albums you can choose from. All these bands are excited and they want to be a part of it. And then that was that was the most fun thing, is sitting with your movie and testing out different songs and figuring out what works best thematically and like tone wise and pacing wise and everything. So that was super cool. I also worked with Wade McNeil and Andrew McPherson, and they created our score. And Wade is in a bunch of different bands, including Alexis on Fire. So they're amazing. So ultimately, what it came to be our soundtrack was it starts off with a punk soundtrack atmosphere, which then turns into a lot of Wade's music score, and then turns into, when the Ranger is in control and in power, it turns into like a country music aesthetic, which we have the great whose name is escaping me. Hold on, wait. Charlie Rich.
Charlie Rich.
You had a special relationship with the music, didn't you, Jeremy?
In 1976 or so, my mom would take me inner tubing down the South Platte River in the mountains of Colorado. And we would drive our green Ford truck to a place called Deckers, where this river ran through the rapids. It was very dangerous. Lots of people died every summer, but for some reason, my mom took me there anyway. And oftentimes on the radio, on her AM radio, she would play this song. Hey, did you happen to see the most beautiful girl? And as I was reading the script, every time this song popped into my head. So I started listening to it while I was reading the script. And so I showed up to set and I said, "Hey, Jen, do you have this take? I want to throw something at you." And she's game for anything. So she said, "Yeah, go ahead." So I kind of sang this song to myself as I was walking off, exiting a scene. And I did it a couple different times. They didn't use all of them, but then Jen can take over the story from there.
So then we're cutting the movie, and one of the editors, Kyle, who was doing our assembly edit, dropped in Jeremy singing it in certain points, like when he's walking away after he takes Abe's foot, and a couple of other moments he used that, and then we dropped in the actual song at the end and in the beginning, and we were just like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. Like, love this." And we showed the producers, and the producers felt the exact same way. So we all were like, we need to get this song.
And so you went out, were you able to license it? Obviously it's in the movie.
Yeah. So we licensed it, and we got it even on our soundtrack and stuff too, like on our vinyl and our CDs and stuff that we had released.
So what transmedia did you do in addition to your other distribution? You just mentioned your vinyl. I noticed there's a novelization about it. So what are you trying to do to help motivate recoupment and profitability?
Yeah, well, so we world premiered at South by Southwest, and after that we sold to Shudder, AMC's horror streaming service, and then we wanted to really do this in punk rock fashion and create as much stuff around it as we could. So we have the vinyl and CDs, and I don't think we ever actually did cassettes. We were talking about cassettes. I don't think we ever moved forward on that.
So what's your distribution like? I mean, obviously you sold to Shudder. It's available on TVOD. What are your plans beyond that? And ultimately kind of the overall question that every indie filmmaker has is it going to come full circle, do you think?
Oh, yes. We already done.
That's amazing. So that's amazing. That's truly like an incredible journey then, that you've already recouped and become profitable. I mean, and you're out for how long?
We sold the movie in the spring of 2018.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's a hell of an accomplishment. That's like the hardest thing to pull off.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So what's next for you? What are you guys thinking? Jocko, you got another script in the works?
We're kicking around ideas. Yeah. Jen and I are talking a lot. Yeah.
That's cool. Is that what's next for? What are you thinking, Jen?
We chat. Jocko and I chat like sometimes several times a week. We do these Zoom calls where we work on some new stuff, which we can't talk about yet, but they're good conversations.
It's a fun conversation for sure.
Yeah. And in addition to that, I'm also working on a couple other things, which I also can't talk too much about, but I'll just say that I'm trying to make my quarantine very productive.
Great. That's very good. That's very exciting news. Jeremy, what are you up to next? I mean, whenever this all ends.
I've got a deck to build at home. Building a 20 by 12 foot deck. I built a bunch of planter boxes. I put a new set of stairs and a ramp on my studio. I'm building a farmhouse table. I renovated my girls' bathroom. I'm doing my bathroom next. But that's not what you meant. Actors are going to be the last to know. And I have a movie I'm supposed to do in Hawaii that got put on hold. I have another movie that I was supposed to do in Ohio, which has moved to Canada, and we'll see about that. And, for me, I'm just in a wait and see.
Well, in the meantime, Jeremy, if people want to follow you, where can they find you?
Jeremy S. Holm on Instagram, Jeremy Holm Actor on Twitter. And I live up here in Vermont, so come visit.
How about you, Jen?
I'm at Bubblegum and Blood on Instagram and J_Wex on Twitter.
And Jocko?
I am at Jocko Furino. That's GIACO FURINO on everything.
And yeah, once again, check out the film The Ranger. You can find it on Shudder.com.
The people you know.
Yeah.
I'd say that's my takeaway. You know, I always tend to think there's going to be this magic person who you're going to meet that's going to help you do the next thing, or who's going to help you get your movie made. I'd say one of the big takeaways from that conversation is, you know, it may be the people you already know. It may be the person you went to school with that wrote a script back then that you need to get back in contact with and talk about that scripting and rewrite it with them. Or, you know, in Jen and Jocko's case, or in Jocko and Jeremy's case, their main actor, it may be someone you waited tables with years ago. And now he's a very successful actor that obviously really liked Jocko from waiting tables with him and was happy to read the script just based on that.
Yeah, you can never discount who you know. I know that, like, that idea of that magic person that exists out there that's going to come in here and be the missing piece. I don't think it's true at all. Like, it seems to be every time it is someone that just wakes up one morning and says, this is what I'm doing and here's the direction we're going, and they hustle. And then that just starts a ball moving and gets people in their court, and then they make it happen. I will say, I think that Jen really took a great approach with this film because she had a background of producing. They'd cut their teeth on making movies. And I think that she she chose the script specifically because of the type of locations, the number of cast members, something they could achieve and recoup on. That's a lesson right there for a first-time film, because making a first-time film that has a following like this, that recouped, has merchandise, has, you know, a name value, and lifts you into like another. I mean, that is checking every box I can think of.
Agreed.
I mean, they obviously had a lot of things go their way. Like their production designer turned in from a team of 2, I think, to a team of 6 for no extra money. But I mean, you're never going to find those deals if you don't start saying at some point, hey, we're making a movie. Do you want to be a part of it?
It sounded like it was definitely another case of everyone being involved, being super, super into it, and loving the team, loving everyone who's working on it, and just being all about it.
I'm going to guess that set was so fun. Like, it just seemed like everyone loved doing that movie.
Jeremy Holm, the actor, said his favorite experience was literally the scene where he's getting his, you know, face bashed in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could tell, like, in that scene that he was just having a great time. Like, you just watch it. I mean, that just seems like such a fun scene to have written for you. And I think they wrote to him because, again, they knew him. They knew he would, you know, he was their friend, that there was a possibility he could do it if he was available. And boom, smart, like, well executed, seemed really clean, that production. I just like listening to them say, even though moving quickly like that, a lot of different locations, remote locations, it seems like they really executed it well, down to having a shower for Jeremy. You know what I mean? That was a detail that stuck out to me. Shower with a beer. That is how you make repeatable filmmaking business. So those little details that get you a good reputation, to make sure that people have a good experience and don't burn to the ground.
Filmmaking is a collaborative experience, and so is this podcast. Follow us on Instagram at framework_productions for upcoming episode announcements, and leave your questions in the comments for our future guests. The first 10 to comment are immediately entered to win a monthly prize. Please take a second to subscribe so you know about future episodes, and leave a review. It really does help us. For more information about today's guest, visit independentfilmmakersguide.com to see visuals, diagrams, and links to the episode in video and article form. IFG is a community, and we want to help you in your filmmaking process.
Hi, I'm Emily Bennett, a horror filmmaker from Brooklyn, New York, and I'm reading the credits. IFG is produced by Framework Productions and directed by James Allerdyce. It's produced by Matt Mundy, edited by Audrey Rae McHale, and hosted by Stephen Pierce. The music is by Glassboy. Find his music on freemusicarchive.org. Thanks for listening.